Happy Monday, guys. Let's talk consistency. Now, achieving our long term goals means being consistent is essential. It's absolutely essential for us to be able to not only get where we want to be, but stay there. Now, I was chatting to Emma this morning about something slightly different, but the ethos was the same in terms of what's the bigger goal, what's the wider focus. All right. So that said, consistency is something that a lot of people struggle with. So let's quickly have a conversation about that. Now, if we, for example, want to drop our body fat, we want to improve our habits, and to be honest, we want to be able to focus on bigger goals. We don't want to be in a situation where we're successful in almost all forms of life, and yet the simple things like diet, exercise, improving our habits, and even thinking clearly are problems that we've got for too long, right? Because there is a solution. Other people can do this. Why can't I, right? It's not a good place to be. So, consistency. Okay, calm down, Mike. You can tell I'm enthusiastic about this. What gets measured gets managed is a famous quote from a guy called Peter Drucker, I believe, and it's about business. However, that said, in the business of being you, we certainly want to be using these structures, these pathways, these mechanisms to be able to, again, achieve the goals that I've already mentioned, because it must be said, it is possible. So, first of all, why can't we do it? And second of all, how can we make this make this happen? All right. So it's a bit of a pain and pleasure, right? It's like, what's going on, what do we need to do, and then the steps involved. So what gets measured gets managed. That's massively important, because if you want to be consistent towards your goals, then being aware of how far away from them you are, all right, is massively important. For example, you may be a little bit further than you thought. Okay, you might be a little bit further back, but we want to get some data which we can then separate from the drama. That's another thing you might hear me say from time to time. So why is tracking and being aware of data and doing the things that I've just already mentioned important? Well, a lot of the time, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, when we measure, when we start to track, when we become more aware, we're able to make better, more conscious decisions. So that can, again, not always, but that can alleviate a lot of the challenges. For example, if you, and again, it's just an example, if you want to reduce your alcohol each day because it's a depressant, it sends you off track, it increases your calories, it's a bad habit, it's stopping you reaching your goals, etc., etc. You may find, as one example of one thing which you could do, that if you monitor that, it may reduce. Again, it's not a one size fits all, it's not a magic bullet, just something to bear in mind. What gets measured gets managed. Now, that said, the sticking point with that, or at least one example of something which can throw us off track, mean that we don't do it, at least for long term, and then we go back to square one and we feel not great about the entire situation, is that we've not done what I said earlier, which is to separate the data from the drama. So, how can we fix this problem that shows up when we start to track and manage the said challenge that we're facing? Hopefully, that's making sense. What we can do is say, right, we can have a conversation with ourselves. What I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the numbers, I'm going to track whatever I'm tracking, and I'm going to be okay with whatever it says, because I know that unless I'm coming from a place of this is okay, and actually tracking is essential in order for me to gain awareness and make better decisions, I'm going to choose right now, before I even start this, to be okay with whatever the numbers say, because if I'm not, that's gonna not be good. It's gonna be unhelpful, and it's gonna prevent the tracking, because it does start with this, but a lot of the time, again, not always, but a lot of the time, it starts with our perceptions, what we think and what we feel about what we do. Because when it comes to, for example, sacking off the tracking, what's the point? A lot of it is because we have this distorted view that this might not work, or that it's going the wrong way, or that, we have a viewpoint, which is another conversation that you certainly can have. So consistency, there are 3 C's that I want to offer you, and that I feel are essential, and that by working one-to-one with people, we can dial into, that help them achieve the goals, which, to be honest, I'm not a fan of one size fits all, generic plans. They don't achieve the 3 C's, which I'm going to go into, which I want you to have either from me as a client or from watching these videos, and they are consistency. Okay, you can do lots of things, but if it's not consistent, if it's not something that you can own, embody, and integrate into your lifestyle for the long term, then you are maybe going to get some results, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. And then when we go back, we're not going to feel great. In fact, we'll feel worse than what we started. So that's a non-starter for me. Like, if it's not something that's a long-term solution, like, I'm out. It's just the way my brain works. It's like, no, thank you. Is what it is, right? Consistency, clarity. So unless we are dialed in and crystal clear about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what that looks like, and what the next step is, we've got that clarity, then we can lose confidence, we can lose adherence, we can lose compliance, things can come a bit wobbly, and then it kind of all falls down, right? So it's like a kind of going through a body transformation is a little bit like a house of cards. Like, you've got to get a lot of things right, but at the end of it, it's amazing, right? And it's like, wow, look at this. I've made a big thing out of just a few bits of paper. And so that's clarity. And then the other one is certainty. And I mentioned it on another video the other day. It's like, you want to be following a proven plan that works most of the time, 9 times out of 10 or more, that looks at not only the solution, but also the problem specific to that person. Now, I can't be more specific than that, because when I coach clients, I'll ask them a question like, how have you got on? Like, what was the goals? Like, tell me a little bit about what we can focus on next. And, how are we tracking that? And I remember, and this will be my final point, I remember watching one of my old coaches in one of his videos, and I was trying to kind of absorb the information and inspiration and listen to what he was saying. And sometimes I was a bit like, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't. And sometimes I was a bit like, there's nothing that I can action, like, specifically, but I'm a bit more aware of what success looks like, but there's nothing that I can take away. And, maybe that's the case with this, maybe it isn't. I'd encourage you to watch it back, make some notes, just, reflect on what I've talked about. But the key here is that if we are amazing, unique individuals, then working one-to-one and reflecting on our individual situation to optimize our individual performance, achieve our goals, and get where we want to be as, once again, individuals, is the best way to get the easiest, quickest, most consistent result. So that's Monday. Hope you have an amazing week. See you tomorrow.